Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. It is Thursday, August 14th. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton, and here's the deal. We're going with a new cadence once a week for the remainder of the season, probably once a week in the offseason as well. That could escalate a bit because we have some news. One episode per week for the remainder of the season will be airing on Sports Grid. This is Just Baseball's opportunity to kind of get on the over-the-air television front, and we're super excited for this opportunity with Sports Grid. With that being said, it's going to sound a little different. So to fit the blocks, here's how we're doing it. We've got 6 topics that we're going to hit today. We're starting with the American League. I have no idea how to wrap my brain around the American League. Also going to the National League West and the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs are on a major slide right now. 2 sluggers that seem like they're barreling towards Cooperstown, or are they? Also, a couple of Mets topics to wrap, but we're going to go 6 topics, varying in length. We just want to kind of dry run and make sure the cadence is down before this Sports Grid debut. But Aram, this is really exciting stuff for Just Baseball as a whole.
Yeah, I'm pumped on it, and it's one of those things that we've wanted to continue to get the show out in front of as many people as possible, and really appreciative of Sports Grid to give us the opportunity to do that. And I don't know if you have the list of all the different places where you can find it. If you're not just listening or watching on YouTube, if you want to pull it up on your TV as well, other than YouTube. I know Sports Grid is like everywhere, like on your Roku, on all of these different streaming channels. They've got a lot of deals out there. You might accidentally even find us sometimes when you're scrolling through on your TV.
Yeah, really, any fitness center in America, I can promise you that you will see us during that window. But again, it's going to be a slightly different cadence. If you love it, let us know. If you hate it, too bad. Sorry about it. It's only once a week. But I do want to start with the American League. As always, Just Baseball Show is presented by the fine folks at BetMGM. The American League is really hurting my brain right now. And the reason I say that is because you have 5 teams that feel like they are formidable World Series candidates, but I can't separate one from the rest. When you look at the American League and the contender ladder, how do you see it?
Oh, well, the tough part with it is it depends what week you ask, right? Like, and that's the funny part about having pretty much a daily show here is sometimes you feel like you're arguing with yourself week to week because one week, I mean, if you go back and listen to our conversations about the Tigers, or you go back and listen to our conversations about some of these ball clubs, a few months ago or a few weeks ago, and then you circle back now, it's so different so quickly. And I think that the Tigers just on the forefront is one of those that becomes a really complicated conversation here. They're playing a bit better of late, but it's still kind of been eh. But they were so good out of the gate that they're 69 and 52. And when you look across the rest of the league, there's not a lot of teams that have won 69 games. To be exact, actually, the only team that has won as many as that is the Brewers, and then the Philadelphia Phillies are also at 69, and then you got the Toronto Blue Jays as well. So you got 3 there.
Yeah.
But that puts them among the best teams in Major League Baseball. The Blue Jays had to be red hot to get there. The Brewers are literally the craziest story in Major League Baseball right now and have won 11 straight games. We just talked to Quinn Priester about it. And the Phillies are the Phillies. So that's the really difficult part for me is I almost feel like we're getting a little harsh on the Tigers because at the end of the day, they're still one of the best teams in Major League Baseball despite being slow over the last month or so.
We talk about, though, when you peak, and it's
Yeah.
obvious the Tigers peaked early. They almost like blew their wad early on this 2025 season, and they're tapering off a little bit. There's still plenty of time to get hot. I mean, we've got 6 more weeks of the MLB season leading into the wild card week. But as the American League stacks up right now, you mentioned Toronto is 20 games over 500. They've got 70 wins. Detroit's got 69. Houston and Seattle are both 67 and 53. They're tied atop the AL West. Seattle, they've won 9 of 10, including 8 in a row. For me, I said it a couple of episodes ago. Seattle's my pick to make it out of the American League because I love what's going right for them right now. I also love what's going wrong. Gino Suarez, that guy's too talented to be this bad in a Mariners uniform. So you know that Gino's really going to turn it on right now and, maybe in September and leading into October. And you also have Randy Arozarena there. I look at Houston and Seattle and I say, who beats you? And I feel bad discounting Toronto the way that I am. And I do feel bad discounting Detroit the way that I am. But I really see this as Houston and Seattle. And I feel like whoever is the better team in that division is my pick to go to the World Series.
Yeah, it's funny. Again, I try so hard not to fall into the recency bias thing, but it's like this is the Mariners team that we've been dreaming on the last couple years. It feels like they're finally falling into that Mariners ball club that we knew they could be. And it's also the big part of it too is we've been begging them to address the offense, and they have. And now they're playing really, really well. And as you mentioned, it's not even some of the recent acquisitions that are really lighting up. I mean, Josh Naylor has been great for them
He's been
already. I,
amazing.
I see our guys at the Marine Layer podcast already saying, re-sign him for next year. Like we'll do it right now. And I just think the presence of Gino, though, of course, has an impact on the rest of the team, and also has an impact on how the rest of the guys are going to get pitched. I got to imagine it's a lot easier for Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh, specifically Cal Raleigh, to just hit when they know that there's a lot of guys behind them instead of, oh, we're the two guys that teams are really game planning for. Now it's, through this entire lineup, you've got above average bats. The only bat without a WRC plus above 100 is Cole Young, who is the scrappiest of the bunch, and it's at 99, by the way. And he's going to give you a good AB every single time. So I do agree with it, especially because I think George Kirby's starting to hit his stride. You look at this
Yep.
rotation, like that's never going to be a question, and the bullpen is the bullpen. So it does kind of feel like this is finally the Mariners team that we've been waiting for the last couple of years. And oh, by the way, you might get Bryce Miller back. Luke Raley is on a rehab assignment. All right. Victor Robles is on a rehab assignment as well. I think he went deep the other day.
Yep.
They're only going to get stronger. So I do think the Mariners are at the top when you're talking about tiering these American League teams, and at least in their division for sure. I like them better than the Astros right now, though the Astros are in a pretty good spot too.
And then I look at the American League East, and I see Toronto. I see the sputtering Yankees with a lot of firepower, and Aaron Judge is on that team. And then I see the Boston Red Sox, and I see Dustin May go 6 scoreless with 8 punchouts on Tuesday night. And then I know that they have Garrett Crochet lining up as well. And I know that Giolito has been throwing the crap out of the ball recently. And I know that Brian Bayo is really starting to hit his stride as well. And this offense, man. I mean, Bregman has homered in back-to-back games in his return to Houston. Roman Anthony looks like the absolute truth right now. Boston is it. If I said it a week ago, they'd feel like a Cinderella. Saying it now, it feels pretty realistic atop with Toronto, and there's not much for me separating Toronto and Boston at the moment.
Real, I was going to ask you that. That was going to be my question. I think Roman Anthony doing what he's doing now really starts to make that a conversation. Do you have a tangible swing adjustment too? Remember the hands kind of started closer to his face and then he'd pull it back. It was a bigger move. Now he's starting with them deeper in his stance, and it just seems like he has more time to see the ball, less movement. He's more consistently on time, and the results have clearly been there. And you mentioned the return of Bregman. But I do think the Blue Jays just have a little bit more going for them right now. And I do think there's a lot of eggs in the Garrett Crochet basket. And he did look human in that start against the Astros. He's also a guy that's going to be exceeding some high innings totals for himself this year, especially if they do go to the postseason, right? And as it gets late, how much can you ride Crochet? And can you ride him through 7, 8, 9 innings like you may need to in some of these outings? That said, I look at the Blue Jays and the staff's been solid, but I kind of go back to the who do I really, really, really trust here?
Yeah.
And I don't know who that necessarily is, but man, do they rake, and they play great defense and they do a lot of things really well. I think they are really close. I do think it's neck and neck. I just there's something about the depth of this Blue Jays offense though
Yeah.
that gets me going. But then I look at the rotation in the bullpen and I say, I feel better about the Blue Jays pitching situation, I think, over 162. But in a playoff series, I do think that you could find a way to kind of close that gap and make these teams very, very comparable. So I do see them kind of as 1A, 1B too.
Very quickly, give me your top three in the American League right now.
Ugh. I got to go Mariners. This is not going to be as quick as you want it to be. Mariners. I got to go Blue Jays with their record. And then I think it becomes more of a Blue Jays Red Sox conversation,
Okay.
which, or excuse me, sorry, a Red Sox Tigers conversation.
Okay.
And
I can
that's
appreciate
where
that.
I struggle, but I'm going to lean towards the Tigers and what they've done over the course of the year.
Okay. I think I go Seattle and Houston as my front two. And then my Cinderella right now, I go Boston as my three. And those are my top three in the American League. I'm very sorry to you, Blue Jays fans and the great fans up north. All right, just baseball show. We're jumping to the National League West here. And the reason we're jumping there is because as we opened our eyes on Wednesday morning, we saw a tie atop the NL West. We saw that between the LA Dodgers and the San Diego Padres. LA and San Diego both 68 and 52. Dodgers are 4 and 6 in the last 10. They've lost 3 in a row. The Padres won 7 of 10, including winning 4 in a row. The Dodgers are struggling in Anaheim right now. I don't know if it's the curse of Ohtani and the curse of Hawaiian real estate at the moment, but listen, man, the Angels for some reason have Ohtani's number at the moment, and the Padres are as hot as a match right now. The thing that jumps out to me about San Diego, number one, Peter started buying them, what, 2.5 weeks ago? He said, I think they can win the division after the deadline. And it seems like that could surely be
Yeah.
the case. San Diego has no weakness at the moment. That's the big thing that jumps out to me when I watch Padres baseball right now.
They satisfied those weaknesses. Like it, you could talk about the lineup length. That's not a problem anymore. You couldn't even cite the bullpen as a weakness. It was already a strength, and now it's the utmost strength of any team I can even remember, like in recent memory. And now you have Mason Miller really starting to settle in here. And again, I'm thinking about Mason Miller a little bit less likely to get burned by the long ball, given that he's going from the launch pad that he had to pitch in Sacramento
Yeah.
to San Diego, which is one of the more hitter friendly or pitcher friendly ballparks, excuse me. Like all of a sudden now you can maybe trust a bit more that the ball is going to stay in the yard if you do make a mistake. And if you get away as a closer, you get away with a two or three fly balls that may have left the yard in Sacramento that don't leave the yard in San Diego. That makes a big difference. And I really do think that's going to just embolden Mason Miller. But you look at the length now, this lineup top to bottom. We were talking about how top heavy it was in the beginning of the year. Like Tatis is now seeing his OPS drop under 800, and you don't even really notice it completely right now
No.
because how good the rest of the lineup is. If Tatis is Tatis, which I think still should expect to happen, this team is really, really good. And remember, they went toe to toe with the Dodgers last year. And are the Dodgers this year any better than they were last year? I don't know. I don't know if that would be the case. You do have Shohei back pitching, but unless Glasnow and Snell are fully healthy and fully throwing the way that they're fully capable of being able to, and even then, I still think these teams are very, very comparable.
My thing on the Dodgers, and the reason that I skew that they're not as good as they were last year, is because Mookie hasn't been good.
No.
Like that's my big thing. Mookie Betts this year looks like 60% of who we think Mookie Betts is. And last
If
year
that.
he did when he was healthy. He looked like 100% of Mookie Betts. And we got 100% of Freddie Freeman, and we got the best hitting version of Shohei Ohtani that we've ever seen. Ohtani this year, it's holding serve. This is exactly what this guy is doing, and he's a future Hall of Famer. He's one of the best players, if not the best player we've ever seen play this game. Freeman is Freeman, and this guy continues to, I don't want to say turn back the clock, just like mature and evolve as a Major League Baseball player, and that's why he's ticketed for Cooperstown. The emergence of Will Smith almost makes it a net neutral for me because you've got Smith trending up while Betts is trending down. But the complementary pieces for me, frankly, are like not as good. Andy Pages has been a nice revelation there, but they had some big time flaws on their roster last year. They have some big time flaws on their roster this year, and that's what jumps out to me.
Here's my one thing, and this might be silly because I don't like to do you actually probably like to do these more than I do in terms of the NBA MLB
I
comparisons.
love them.
But
They're my
I was a
favorite thing
Miami
ever.
Heat fan, man, and I mean I am a Miami Heat fan, but in the Big Three era, the regular season started to just kind of become a going through the motions thing. And I know
Yes.
you can't fully do that in baseball, but you also kind of can when you've got these road trips and you're just not locked in on the same degree. But then I think about a Freddie Freeman who was one of the best postseason performers we've ever seen last year. I think about a Mookie Betts who will probably kick it into gear and lock in the postseason. Not that he's not locked in now; he's clearly going through it. But it's just Mookie Betts. You think something's going to snap in the postseason, and you think about Teoscar Hernandez and some of these other guys, and it's like, okay, maybe they kick it into another gear in the postseason because there is this hangover there. I think there is an aspect to it that is natural there. They have been pacing the rotation and the returns of some of these guys for the final push. So part of me is just, and maybe it's just because they are the big bad Dodgers still. I don't want to put too much into the regular season, I don't even want to say struggles are still phenomenal, but shortcomings, as I kind of look at it like I'm feeling better about their chances of being knocked off because of the Padres' strength.
Yeah.
That said, it is easy to start to get lost in the idea that, well, all of a sudden, Alex Call, who's not bad, it was a nice pickup. I know you like that pickup.
Yeah.
Alex Call is getting a lot of run out there. Michael Conforto is still playing a lot in that. Like that is not a scary outfield, right? That is not a team that you are citing as the reason why we need a salary cap, right? Like when you look at the outfield, it doesn't feel like that's the team that you would be talking about. But I still look at them and say they could easily snap into gear in the postseason, and that's the one thing. But winning the division, whether you want to talk about the time off or not, is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers don't want to lose that division, and the Padres may just want it more down this
Yeah.
stretch here. And if the Dodgers are on a short set, all of a sudden you run into an ace and then you get punched in the mouth again. We've seen it happen before. I don't think they want to get back there. So I'm playing both sides here, but I think they do need to kick it into gear to win this division. And if they don't, like, I think they could get knocked off in the playoffs, even if they do lock in. So I am really interested to see how this next month or so goes.
So my big thing is, how do we frame the conversation? Is the conversation around who is the more formidable World Series contender? Because if that's the case, like, it's the Dodgers based on the star power that they have and what they can look like in October.
Yeah.
But I think the conversation that we're having is who's more capable of winning this division right now. And I mean, you talk about the prioritization of the regular season. That's San Diego at the moment. That's not the Dodgers. And we still see it, man. You don't have to be a Heat team to realize that. Like, LeBron, I mean, we talked about the Kevin Durant Suns when he was there, right? The Kevin Durant Suns didn't care about the regular season, and they were that sleeping giant once you got into the playoffs. So for me, like, I'm looking at the Dodgers and I'm saying, did you deprioritize this enough to the point where you're going to cough up this division? I feel like there was such a large difference in talent between the Dodgers and the rest of that division before this trade deadline that they could effectively coast through the final 2 months. That's just not the case anymore.
No, and it's gonna be a sprint through the finish line, and I think you have this invigorated Padres team with a lot of new faces and some players that I mean, Laureano and Ryan O'Hearn this year were playing on a team that was frustrating all year long. They've got to be feeling like they've got a shot in the arm, and then their presence has to be giving the entire team a shot in the arm. And then you look at the bullpen, and those guys just all looking around at each other and saying, "Holy crap!" So the other thing too is if you have them winning the division set up, for a longer term, series here, anything can happen when you got the short spurt there of just 3 games in the wild card. So that's the part that's really fun to me. But I think it's going to be wide open, and I think the Padres have everything it takes to be able to knock them off.
Certainly seems like that. Okay, let's move to the Cubs slide here. The Cubs slide is very interesting to me. The Chicago Cubs, as it stands right now, are 7.5 back of the Milwaukee Brewers in the National League Central. They've dropped their last 2. They've lost 6 of 10. They've actually lost 6 of the last 9. And we're starting to see the frustration really eke out here with Chicago. Cubs are 67 and 51. Milwaukee is 75 and 44. What we saw from Chicago was Kyle Tucker slamming a helmet in the dugout and PCA slamming a bat after he struck out looking. Craig Counsell, I mean, night after night in his post-game manager availability, it just seems like he's running short on answers and doesn't have a good idea of, how to quell the Cubs media base. It's just kind of bizarre what's going on in Cubby land here, and it really feels like it started at the trade deadline. And we talked about the Cubs being one of, if not the most disappointing deadline among buyers in Major League Baseball. It almost feels like that clubhouse is aware that they should have done a heck of a better job buying at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I think there's just natural struggles that come. We were talking about a PCA possible regression just based on all the underlying data, right? Like Kyle Tucker has a lot of pressure on him to help push this team into the playoffs, and also it's a contract year for a deal that people are expecting to start with a 4 and potentially push to 450. So there's a lot going into that. But at the same time, I do think that this team had to be a little bit disappointed to not see, just more added. Especially when you're seeing the Padres do what they're doing. Not everybody needs to be that insane. But when you're seeing some other teams across the league, add a little bit more aggressively, and you don't really do anything. And the one position player addition that you make is at a position where it's probably been your best player over the last few weeks in Matt Shaw, who has 1,000 OPS over his last 10 games and has been great since pretty much the All-Star break. And now I know Castro can play every position, but right now that seems to be the obvious spot to fit him in. There's definitely a tangible like heaviness and disappointment when your team also that has been out there and kind of floated all these different ideas, didn't ever talk down the ideas of being aggressive at the deadline, decided not to do anything. I got to imagine that they feel that or throughout that clubhouse. And I mean, when you look at the struggles, it's just kind of bleeding through to all of their core guys. It's pretty crazy to see. It's been nice to see Swanson pick it up, and Justin Turner's been great in the very few spots that they've given him. The walk off, I mean, that was absolutely huge for them. But it has been wild to see this offense slow down because you knew PCA would come down to earth a little bit. But did you think Michael Busch would hit 158 over his last 30 days?
No.
Everyone's complaining about Ian Happ. He's not the problem. He's been fine. Seiya Suzuki, 587 OPS over his last 30 days. Yeah. I mean, up until these last couple weeks, Dansby Swanson was in that same conversation as well. It's been really, really rough to watch. And then Kyle Tucker, it's a 669 over his last 30 days. If those guys aren't mashing, this is a team that we knew was going to have to mash, and they didn't add much to the rotation or the bullpen. So when they're not mashing, it's really hard to win these games.
As we sit here and talk on Wednesday, August 13th, their August OPS as a team is 624. That's 29th in Major League Baseball. The only team that's been worse in the month of August, 533, is the Baltimore Orioles. We were just talking about Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano going over to San Diego. It seems like they took all the might away from Baltimore. 533 team OPS for Baltimore in their first 10 games in the month of August. But Chicago hitting 223 as a team. And oh, by the way, I mean, the pitching has been okay, not stellar. The Cubs right now, I mean, it's a 3-1 over their last 10 games. But it just seems like they're lacking the second in the whole it takes two to tango deal right now. And a segmented baseball team going into August is just a little scary. You got to wait until September, and the Cubs they can moonwalk their way into a wild card spot, but I really thought that we were going to see a heavyweight bout in the NL Central. I thought we were looking at the AL West, the NL West, the NL East, and the NL Central as the four divisions that were really up for grabs up top. Credit to Milwaukee for doing what they needed to do, but Chicago all of a sudden, like, what are their odds that they hang out and they come back in the National League Central and contend for a division title? Like 5%, 10%,
if that. Yeah, I mean it feels almost impossible at this point. It's 7.5 games, and it's just they're trending in what feels like totally, not even feels like, what is totally different directions. I think 5% might even be generous, but you got to give them at least that with the firepower that they have offensively. But this is a team that, even though they have pitched pretty well, it's the offense that wins them a lot of games. So yeah. I feel like there would have been nothing more comforting than seeing more pitching added to the fold here and say, okay, like, we can struggle at points and we're still going to win games. Like, the pitching's going to bail us out. And they have a little bit, but they need more firepower in that pitching staff, whether it was in the rotation or in the bullpen, to be able to bail that offense out more consistently so that it can come back around and pick it up again.
That was the Cubs slide. We're going to talk about two sluggers that could be headed to the Hall of Fame in a moment. But before that, we'll take a quick break. Just Baseball Show, Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton here on Thursday, August 14th. I want to talk about two sluggers. I want to talk about a guy that is receiving a touch of NL MVP love and a guy that has really kept the Yankees afloat offensively over the last couple of weeks. Giancarlo Stanton on the Yankees side, Kyle Schwarber on the Phillies side. And they hurt my brain, much like the American League and just tiering who's good, who's, contender, pretender type deal. I'm trying to figure out if both these guys are going to the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done. Because there's a camp that says, heck yeah, they're both going. Of course. I mean, they could flirt with, both of them are going to zoom past 400 homers. Stanton's already there. If Stanton gets to 500, you would think, oh yeah, he's totally in. There's a world Schwarber gets to 500 as well if he continues this run that he's on at the moment. This guy seems like a lock for 35, 40 homers every year, and the way he looks, the way he's swinging it, you feel like the decline is nowhere close. So for me, like, I want to start overall and then get into a case by case. Do you feel like this kind of player is a Hall of Fame player?
It's here. They're leading the charge of what's going to be, I think, uh, a case that's going to come up a lot more as we move forward. And I know that people, I don't want to have the old head take, like there's some former MLB players on social media and stuff that are like, oh, like, this is the new norm.
Oh,
Not
people love
really.
batting average right now. You seen that?
Oh, I've been seeing that. No,
A
it's
lot of
just,
journeyman catchers love batting average at
yeah.
the moment.
But they've studied all that, apparently. Like, this isn't an archetype that's taking over Major League Baseball, but it is one that I think you start to look at the definitive numbers a little bit more. Where, like, if Adam Dunn got to 500, he's a Hall of Famer. He came up just short. It is silly to a degree, but I think with these types of players, it becomes a lot less ambiguous of, oh, well, they did a little bit of this or a little bit of that. I think you really clear cut look at the numbers and say, did you exceed this threshold or not? And especially when it is so offensive driven as well, which is going to be the case with both of these guys. I think Stanton has a much stronger case. And maybe there's a little bit of bias. I was just actually talking about this with Griffin Conine, because it's like, this is the first player that we grew up watching and we could say we saw home run 1 to 500.
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody. There's a lot of guys that I've seen home run 200 to 500 or maybe 150 to 500, but there isn't a guy that I've seen 1 to 500. So that's really cool to think about in theory. The other thing that we were talking about in that conversation was Giancarlo Stanton should start every season in June. I think.
Yes.
I think he should ease in, get those elbow shots, do whatever you need to do, and then sprint. So he's not fading at the end, just sprint. And I know people are going to be like, oh, like, screw that. He's making too much money. Look at what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
Instead of losing him, and having him fade at the end of the year. The other thing with Giancarlo Stanton, of course, this is firing me up because, again, I watched
He's
him
your
come
guy.
up
Who
in
you
the
grew up
football
with.
stadium in the teal.
When he was Mike.
He was Mike. He had 2 seasons of his prime where he hit like 2 and 3 home runs because he was hurt. And I know you can play that game with a lot of people. But it's a big reason why people look at Ken Griffey and say, man, that guy could have broke the home run record. Giancarlo Stanton at age 29 and 30, remember, mind you, this is 1 year and 2 year removed from 59 home runs and the MVP with the Marlins, hit 3 and 4 home runs.
Yeah.
I know that he has never quite recaptured that MVP level, but let's just say he hit 35, 40 home runs in those 2 years. He would already be at 500. So I think that's worth just thinking about, and how injuries have limited him a little bit, so that if he does get to 500, even though I think that should be an automatic conversation, he gets to 500 with injuries. And then you add in the postseason performance and everything. I think he's a shoo-in. I really do.
You take a peek at what this guy did from age 20 through 27, the entirety of his Marlins career on a per season basis. This guy was hitting 33 homers a year from 20 to 27. And the whole idea is a physical prime, a peak, starts at about 27 years old for a guy. I mean, Judge debuted at what, 26 years old? He was a rookie at 26. I mean, Stanton is accomplishing all of this before his age 27 season is up. So in the entirety of his Marlins tenure, this guy had 267 homers before some guys even debut. River Ryan, 27 years old when he debuted with the LA Dodgers. Think about that. Giancarlo was closer to 300 than he was 200 career homers by that point. And you look at Giancarlo since 38 homers in his first year, but then 35 in 2021. It's funny because this guy has just been dragged over the course of his entire Yankee career. 35 homers in 21, 31 in 22, 24 in 23, 27 and 24, and this year 12 and 42 games and a 962 OPS. And oh, by the way, the dude's hitting 300 for your batting average appreciators out there.
Yeah.
The other big wrinkle in this for Stanton personally that I look at, this guy's one of the best postseason hitters we've seen in a very long time, maybe all time. This guy in 41 postseason games has 18 homers. He's driven in 40, and he's got a 994 career OPS in the postseason. He rises to the moment. He has an MVP under his belt. And if he's at 500 homers, This guy, in terms of this era of baseball, is so important. He should go into that museum. Like, that's why I stand firmly on Giancarlo is going to be in the Hall.
And the kids these days, man, they,
The youths.
they don't realize Giancarlo Stanton has not always been this immobile guy. I see them complaining about him jogging to first base. Brother, if he sprints to first base, you will not have him for the playoffs. You will not even have him down the stretch. His job now is to hit laser beams. You also have this aspect to him. I know we have O'Neal Cruz now, but he was the first, like, we've never seen that before guy in terms of batted ball data. And I know that in the StatCast era, like he just broke it, but also, I mean, put a ball in Dodger Stadium that you have legends told of, and there's a special sign for. Like, he has that legendary aspect to him as well. The last thing I'll say is, like, he actually was defensively useful for parts of his career. I think if you look at his career in the outfield, he's a positive defensive player. Obviously, it's because he's DH the last 7 years, mostly because he's been so broken physically. But that was because his body fell apart. Schwarber, it's like he couldn't catch. Where the hell else do we put him? He's one of the worst outfielders, even in his late 20s. Giancarlo was a pretty good outfielder. He was at least fine out there. He had a rocket for an arm, and he was giving you value. And I'm curious what the exact DRS is. But if I remember correctly, it's positive. That's another wrinkle in this when we're talking about these kind of positionless mashers that get to 500. Giancarlo was not always that. So I think he has a lot stronger case than Schwarber. But if Schwarber hits his way to 500 plus and also has his postseason resume, I think he's got a case too. But I would really, I'm going to be very vocal about Giancarlo's case. I hope that I have a vote at that point,
Yeah.
which means he's played long enough, and that means I've done enough in my career. But man, it'd be an honor to vote for him because, bias aside, I think he's done enough. I really do.
Schwarber's the more, I guess, abstract conversation because there's no MVP. There's only two All-Star games to this point. But I look at this Philly contract. It's a 4-year, $79 million deal that is up at the end of this year. And I'm thinking, Dave Dombrowski, tip of the cap to you, dude. This is one of the most effective 4-year deals that I think we've ever seen. This guy's homer totals in his 4 years in Philadelphia: 46, 47, 38, and now in 119 games, he's already at 42. He could absolutely get to 55 or 60 homers this year.
Yeah.
55 feels more realistic than 60, but Schwarber, if he does get to 500, he does, for me personally, feel like the first 500 homer guy to get left out because he's a DH and because he was bad defensively the entirety of his career. But I just want to appreciate who Schwarber is for a
Yeah.
moment because, dude, like, this has been a joy to watch.
He's the biggest brain teaser one where I think you gotta sit down and think about it. Because again, I think people are really gonna look at Giancarlo Stanton and say, oh, well, you got to apply the same logic. Giancarlo gave you 6, 7, 8 years of like actually playing a decent outfield and doing some, even stole some bags. Like, I, it'll be a big brain teaser with Schwarber because it's going to be a big precedent setter too for other players that follow in that mold. And he could be the first guy to get to 500 and not get there. I still am of the belief of if you get to 500, you're in. But if you start looking at the career WAR numbers and things like that, and it doesn't line up with some other guys, it might be difficult. But I hope Schwarber just keeps going to a point where like he's at almost 600 and it's not even a conversation, which I think he could do. This guy might do it till he's 40,
He
but
could,
because he was DHing the whole time or playing a bad corner outfield, that's the thing.
I know, real quick. Do you see any world where he's not a Philadelphia Philly next year?
I could see somebody coming out and giving him a big bag, but I don't. I think he's got to be a Philly, and I think they bring him back.
I hope for his case he gets a bag, and I hope for Philly's case he's a Philadelphia Philly. Okay, we just talked about Stanton and Schwarber and the homers and how they stand. Now we got to get to Pete Alonso, who hit number 253 to break a tie with Darryl Strawberry for the New York Mets all-time home run leader. It was fun. Howie Rose quote tweeted a kind of sliding graphic of the Mets franchise history over the years and who the home run leader has been and the totals that have climbed. And like you see Piazza shoot up, and then you see Howard Johnson shoot up, and then you see David Wright shoot up there, and then Darryl Strawberry like stood alone for a while. And Alonso, it happened so quickly. And Pete Alonso, with a multi-homer day on Tuesday, gave himself sole possession of number one on the all-time home run list as a New York Met. Much like Schwarber being a Philly, and I just pose that to you, I really don't see a world where Alonso's not a Met for the rest of his
I,
career. And I know that was in question coming into this season. It should not be in question moving forward.
I was about to bring that up. Like, don't let it be forgotten. And I don't want to be the guy that's harping on negative things. The Mets almost let this guy walk. I
Yeah.
really, if his market didn't, what would be the word for like the opposite of materializing? Like,
It
it,
dissolve,
yeah,
dissipate.
if his market didn't dissolve the way that it did, and he just landed back into their laps, he would have went somewhere else, which is just crazy. And I know that you don't make decisions fully based on, oh, he's a Met and whatever. But I do think franchises like that, especially the Mets, should make decisions based on that.
And Steve Cohen can make decisions on that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care what it costs. He's a Met.
Yeah, especially when you're throwing out $1 billion almost for Juan Soto. So it really is nice to see him in New York and doing this, and he should be a Met for life. And where would this team be without him? Let's just think about it from a pure baseball standpoint. Forget the like that it's great and rah rah, and it's great to have him back, and it's been really cool. This team is slowed down of late, but what does it look like without him? What kind of protection does Juan Soto have without Alonso, and even vice versa? But I mean, it has been huge. When Juan Soto was a little bit human at the start of the season, like,
Yeah.
what if you didn't have Pete Alonso there? So I think that's a big part of this whole thing, and I'm glad he's there. But this is another guy that he's going to make a push. He got a later start, but he's going to make a push to 500 too, because clearly he's not slowing down anytime soon. He's going to get his bag, and I know he's playing with a chip on his shoulder, so that's definitely helping. But he strikes me as a guy that's going to keep it rolling late into his career and just always be able to get these powerful swings off.
Here's the thing that jumps out to me about Alonso. Obviously he started with that unanimous National League Rookie of the Year, and he had 53 homers his rookie year, drove in 120. Like, this guy drove in 131 in 2022. He hit 46 homers the next year in 2023. It was a down year in 2024, but it was still a 790 OPS and 34 homers that he played every game. And this year he's tracking for another 35 homers, 120 driven in, and an OPS flirting with 900. And I look at this guy's career, and something that I value when you hit the market with him and it's time to negotiate that long-term deal to make him a Met forever is not only is this guy productive in the power department of what you ask for, he's a bit of a throwback in that regard where, like, WRC plus obviously matters. WAR matters more than any of the traditional counting numbers that you could possibly throw out. But Alonso's role with the New York Mets feels like it's homers and RBIs. And this guy is better than most in Major League Baseball at homers and RBIs. So it's okay to make an exception on that front sometimes. But the thing that jumps out to me is games played. This guy debuted in 2019, and he played 161 games. Played 57 of the 60 in 2020, 152 in 21, missed 2 games in 22, played 154 in 23, didn't miss a game last year, and hasn't missed a game this year. And that's something that jumps out to me. This guy is proven to be durable. Now he's getting to the other side of 30. You reward him for being available and good whenever he's on the field. And that's the kind of first baseman that I want to pay. Like,
Yeah.
Vladdy Jr. is a guy that you're comfortable paying because he's not only been productive, but he's been on the field for the entirety of his career. That's the biggest thing that jumps out to me with Alonso. And dude, like, Mets fans cannot take that for granted because they've seen Lindor go through bumps and bruises, and he fights through them. Credit to him. But they've seen Nimmo on the shelf for a while. They've seen McNeil on the shelf for a while. They dealt with the best pitching staff that never was because those guys couldn't really stay healthy. Remember, Zach Wheeler was a Met for a while, and he couldn't stay on the mound. He couldn't stay healthy. There have been so many possible superstars that just never really got the chance to get that extended runway in a Mets uniform. This is your opportunity to have that guy. You go to Citi Field, you know you're seeing him play every single day.
I do think that's a really important point. And when we talk about like NBA comparisons, a big problem in that league is you buy tickets sometimes and you don't know if you're going to see the guy that you wanted to see play. But even in baseball nowadays, a lot more scheduled off days, right? A lot more platooning too, which is a part of that.
Yeah.
But you don't see the guys playing 158, 160, 162 games. And And Alonso's one of those guys that does that. And I think the value of that is you're cumulatively going to hit a lot of home runs, drive in a lot of runs, do all those things. And you want a guy that's going to be doing that day in, day out for you. The other thing that I like about Alonso, and I think that makes him extremely valuable, which is also why I was very surprised to not see his market materialize more, is that he is kind of this like modern slugger in the way that he's not going to strike out that much for how much power he's providing. And I think that's why people want to talk about RBI and how it's not as much of a stat that you can control. And I agree, like it's definitely not something that I'm usually measuring players against each other with, but it is something that you cite when it's really high. As I do think there's components that contribute to that. And one of them being you slug a lot. The other being that you put the ball in play a decent amount for a guy who slugs a lot. And I think that's why Pete Alonso is so productive in that regard is he slugs a lot, but he also hits the ball hard and play a lot for a guy that can hit 50 home runs. And you don't see a lot of that in that archetype of player in today's game.
You give yourself a shot, it seems. And like Cal Raleigh is a guy that punches out in the high 20%. Ohtani is punching out in the high 20%, mid 20%. But, guys that jump out on that regard, like low 20 or lower, Juan Soto is another one of those guys that's like not really going to strike out, put the ball in play, and oh, by the way, hit the ball out of the ballpark. Yordan Alvarez, when he's healthy, is probably the gold standard for me at doing that. But Alonso is in rare company, it surely seems, at putting the ball in play and putting it in play ridiculously hard. Another guy that I want to shout out in that regard, Youngin. Junior Caminero is really not punching out. I know he puts it on the ground, but like, man, can he hit it a mile.
If you put it on the ground at 112, it's probably going to get through. Like that's the thing. And that's why that goes back to our call-up conversations. And it's fun now, like our call-up conversations can kind of graduate into our just baseball show conversations. And we were talking about how concerned a couple years ago, like how concerned should we be about the Junior Caminero ground ball rates? I'm like, well, when he hits it in the air, it's gone because it's his air EVs are so high. And then when he hits it on the ground, he's going to get away with way more than the average guy. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Caminero, who, by the way, could have had his own segment today, too, with the numbers that he's been putting up over the last few weeks, months.
But it's appreciation of Pete Alonso, man. Appreciation of power. We'll talk about a Met in a moment. And that Met in a moment is Nolan McLean, one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball, is set to make his major league debut on Saturday. Nolan McLean has been as productive a pitching prospect as we've had in minor league baseball this year. He's not top 10 in terms of prospects, like that's reserved for, the Bubba Chandlers and his high threes ERA. McLean looks better right now. Nolan McLean, 113 and two-thirds innings this year between AA Binghamton and AAA Syracuse. 5 starts in Binghamton, he was nails. 26 and a third at a 1.37 ERA. 87 and a third innings as a Syracuse Met. This guy had a 2.78 ERA, so a 2.45 ERA, punching out north of 10 hitters per nine, walking 4 hitters per nine. Former two-way guy at Oklahoma State, getting his shot to pitch for the New York Mets now. Were you thinking that there was a world where he was going to debut before Brandon Sproat last year?
Like at the start of last year? No way.
No chance.
Way. No
even at the end of last year, I'm thinking no chance.
Yeah, even end, because you figured, okay, well, Sproat's going to come back, and settle in AAA, which he has, by the way. And even now, like, if you asked me a couple months ago, I would have said, okay, yeah, McLean's going to be the guy that I think gets up first. But then Sproat throwing the ball so well of late in AAA too, I thought, oh, maybe he still gets the nod first anyways. It's McLean. And some of that does have to do with the slow acclimation to AAA for Brandon Sproat. But the majority of it is that McLean is a guy that looks like he can handle that leap to the big leagues. I think more quickly for a team that needs results now. All right, like he has this crazy assortment of pitches and a ridiculous feel to spin the baseball that I think is going to play really well. And when you don't have much familiarity with a guy who's just getting up, a lot of the time still they're going to go look at the AAA stuff. They're going to get the data there, and they're going to zero in on what your strengths and weaknesses are because usually as a young arm, that's going to be a little bit more clear cut. With McLean, it's going to be really hard to game plan for this guy. He's got a sinker, a four-seamer, a sweeper, a curve, a splitter, a cutter, and then a bigger slider that will mix in as well. Like all of those pitches across the board, and some of them are really, really impressive. I mean, you look at what the sinker has done this year. It's yielded a 72% ground ball rate. So even if he's not getting these crazy whiffs, he's gonna be able to get ground balls and get outs, and that's why I think he's a candidate to just get up there and be solid for them, and be better than a Frankie Montas or some of the other guys that they've had up there. So I'm pumped about it. I think he's gonna help them, and there's a chance where he can make a huge impact. I mean, you look at his last 8 starts; he's striking out 31% of batters, but he doesn't need to be a whiff machine to help this team because he gets a ton of ground balls as well, and he throws enough strikes.
You're putting together a scouting report for an opposing hitter. What pitches are you IDing? What tendencies are you IDing with Nolan McLean?
Man, I'm probably telling him to see the ball up a little bit
Okay.
because his best and most used pitch right now is a sinker, but he only throws that 24% of the time. So when you want to see the ball up, guess what? He can still go four seamer up, and he's going to blow it by you then at the top. But I would say look for something that you can lift because the best pitches that he has going right now, and I think the thing that makes him so difficult is he has the sinker running arm side, and then he's got the sweeper running glove side, and it's the one of the sharpest and latest breaking sweepers in professional baseball right now. So I would try to get out of that sinker sweeper cadence because he gets as much horizontal separation as anybody, and try to kind of narrow that zone a little bit and bring him up. But
Is
it's
it
going to be hard.
is it Michael King-ish in San Diego, that sinker sweeper combo?
Yeah, I think so. Just maybe not as much of the built-in deception, but he's also got a deeper bag of pitches, I think, that he's going to roll into as well.
Way
So
deeper back. It feels
yeah,
like King at points is a two-pitch pitcher, and McLean that's not the case. So, okay, you close your eyes, you look at the Mets starting rotation next year. What do you see? Do you see McLean, Sproat, and Tong all in there at some point next year? That's a young rotation for a very high payroll team.
yeah, I mean, you probably it's going to be Holmes, Peterson, and Sanga though too, right? So then where does everybody else fit? Manaya? What's the Manaya contract again?
A
He's going to be
multi-year deal.
they're in a weird spot there, huh? It's going to be fun though. I think for sure you have McLean up there. I think Sprout should get every opportunity to break camp. I don't
Yeah.
think it would be crazy for him to be 25 plus going back to AAA. And then I think you have a little bit more time with Tong to continue to refine the breaking balls and just throw some more strikes. So I think Tong not quite yet, but
Okay.
then you have the two youngins there as well. And don't forget Christian Scott's coming back from the hybrid elbow surgery as well,
Yeah.
and that's a guy that was throwing really well. They're gonna have a lot of options next year, but I think McLean and Sproat should be in there.
Okay. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting song and dance with Carlos Mendoza and filling out the New York Mets rotation next year. But Nolan McLean does feel like a guy that could be in the Met rotation for the foreseeable future. That's Aram. I'm Jack. Every link you need is in the episode description. This has been a joy. Again, this is the new format because we are joining our friends at Sports Grid. Once a week, one show a week will sound like this. But a reminder, the 4 show a week cadence will not change. 3 shows a week in the off season. That will not change, and we will be free flowing and full movement in all of those as well. But this is a great opportunity, expanding the reach of the Just Baseball Show. Appreciate you guys. Again, Just Baseball Show is available wherever you get your podcast. We will talk to you on Friday. It'll be Arm and Peter. Thank you guys very much.